It's been more than a month since 4 Arab states, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain and Egypt, engineered an air, land and sea blockade of Qatar. This is now the most serious diplomatic crisis in the Middle East in decades, but its origins run deep. There are allegations of subterfuge, sabotage, coup attempts, even terrorism. Here in Qatar, perhaps one man has been watching these tensions rise closer than others. That's Khalid bin Mohammad Attiyah, Qatar's Defence Minister. Your view, where did this come from?
I can assure you that it has been going for a long time. It goes long back to '96, when we faced such a thing. But at that time it was more nasty. It was mostly was a hard coup at that time. Then we faced similar things in 2013, 2014. I'm sure, by now everyone knows what happened then. But the only thing that they don't know, that all the accusation against Qatar, against the Emir of Qatar, that he is taking a policy which is against the GCC. This is not true for a simple reason. The Emir resumed power in June 25th, 2013. At that time I was in the government, but I became, on the 26th June, I became the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and then we went to give the oath in front of His Highness the Emir. Days later, maybe in July, I received a phone call from my colleague in Kuwait, and he was asking me that, Khalid, what's going on? What's wrong? I says, Sheikh Subah, what's happening? He says, well, we received a complaint from Saudi. And I said, complaint about what? And he says that Qatar is making trouble in the region and we have to come together quickly to solve this issue. And that was maybe 10 days after His Highness the Emir resumed power. So that shows the people that it is not about Sheikh Tamim, it's not about, the attitude of the state of Qatar. It's about something which they insist of doing since '96 until that day. And then suddenly we have came to 2017 when they decided to have this embargo and besiege Qatar from all the direction with the three neighbors. I think today we are facing the same situation which happened in Nicaragua in the 1980s, where they have to go to the ICJ, and by the end of the day they managed to get their full compensation on that. I think this is one of the way that we might get the compensation against all the damages which happened to Qatar because of the besiege and against the besieging countries.
What is it about Sheikh Tamim that they don't like, you think?
I have said this before, I will say it today and I'll keep saying this. Sheikh Tamim considered to be the beacon of enlightenment in the region, and I insist on this. This man have given our children, the best education anyone can have, the best health standard. He raised the name of Qatar all over the globe. We have engaged people in culture. We have best sport event. As I say, the education, the health. So what's a citizenship wants? More than having this good standard of living. And I think being a young, ambitious leader sometimes, trigger allergy, if I may say so.
We've seen considerable weapons buying in the region. Saudi Arabia and the UAE have been buying hundreds of billions of dollars worth of weapons, particularly, of course, from the United States. We see a $12 billion arms deal also with the United States for Qatar. Do you think all of this buying of arms and weapons equates to a regional arms race?
No, not really, because all this defense contract is being planned and worked earlier. And for example, I'll speak about Qatar, the F-15 contract, which I signed recently in the United States. So this has been going for the past 2 years. And the time we get the Congress approval, we concluded. So this is a contract which has been negotiated and studied for a long time now. We have a common enemy. We have terrorism now everywhere. We have an ally with us as we speak today, countering terrorism. We have the United States are present here in Qatar, and we have a lot of things to do together in this manner. And we want to depend on ourselves. We want to depend on our armed forces, because this enemy is unconventional, who have been, emerged and need a lot of effort to combat the terrorism.
Well, who do you see, or which state do you see as the biggest threat to Qatar's sovereignty?
Well, you cannot pinpoint a finger to a state or to a direction. The thing we should do is to prepare ourselves to be ready for the unexpected.
The United States has a very important military facility here, around 11,000 of its troops. It's very key to US security and its role in combating terrorism in the region. Now, we've heard for a long time that the UAE has been lobbying to move that base there. Donald Trump 2 days ago was asked about this very thing, and he said if we ever had to leave, we'd have 10 countries willing to build us another one. We're not going to have a problem with the military base, but if we need another military base, you have other countries that would gladly build it. Are you concerned the US could actually move the base?
I would like to answer you in two parts. First of all, I'm not surprised that the UAE is working to get the base out of Qatar. Yes, it is painful when you hear that what so-called your brothers is working to sabotage your reputation and wanted to take the American base out of Qatar. But let me assure you something. Our relation with the United States, especially in the defense, it's a strategical one. While we are fighting with their men and women in Qatar, to combat terrorism, and while we are busy doing this for the whole of the world and for the stability of the region, we find, voices like this raises from time to time. But I assure you that our relation is strong, our relation is a historical one and strategical one with the United States.
You speak of your brothers in the GCC and the unfortunate moves, as you say, that they have been, or some of them, have undertaken to undermine Qatar's position in the world. And this has been going on for several years now. We know that Qatar is a member of the Saudi-led coalition fighting the Houthi rebels in Yemen. So why did Qatar join that coalition?
We are as a member of the GCC, and at the time we have our own opinion of how to solve the situation in Yemen. We always believe in dialogue. We always believe on development is the shortest way to solve issue such the one in Yemen. And the people, when they started to find hope, they can forget about extremism and but unfortunately, we find ourselves obliged to join the coalition. And we never been to inside Yemen, by the way. We've been defending the border of Saudi on all our tasks. But after the recent aggression on Qatar, they asked us to leave the border of Saudi Arabia, which we did, and all our soldiers is back.
Well, many people say, including the United Nations, that this Saudi-led coalition is responsible for the majority of civilian deaths in Yemen, this coalition which did previously include Qatar. We've had congressmen and senators in the United States, including Ted Lieu, call this a war crime. Do you see that Qatar is somehow responsible for this crisis in Yemen now?
I think looking into the role of Qatar very closely, even by an investigation authority, I think you'll find out that we never been engaged in any operation which comes near or in a field of operation where there is a civilian is.
Totally off topic then, or shifting gears, the Turkish military base. Is this a point of discussion or not?
Well, yes, it was one of the 13 points which popped out to us, and they asked us to close the Turkish base. But, unfortunately, we did not choose the time to attack and besiege and, boycott Qatar. They did choose the time. So they cannot come and ask us to close a base where everybody knows about it from a long time back. And this is consider a relation between two sovereign state country.
It's 1 year since the attempted coup in Turkey in 2016, July 15. So how close do you think Qatar was to this sort of situation happening here?
Well, I think we were watching the scene very closely. His Highness the Emir was the first to call President Erdogan at that day. And we had, if I may say so, a gut feeling that Qatar will be next for somehow. Maybe because the position that Qatar and Turkey take as an honored, position with the, crushed people around the world. So we felt that we might be the next target somehow.
Well, in the midst of this crisis, or in the beginning of the crisis, you saw Turkey springing into action to send aid and food and whatever it could to Qatar, the same as Iran. So what is the relationship now with Iran? Has it changed? Has it improved? Because this, of course, is one of those 13 demands.
No, when we come to the relation between us and Iran, if we look around us, the neighbors who boycotted us, who besieged Qatar, they have way far relation with Iran than Qatar do. If you come to the trade, they have billions of dollars with Iran. If you talk about the Iranian presence, they have hundreds of thousands. So the matter in the end of the day, it is not having relation with Iran or not, because they have better relation with Iran. But in this crisis, Iran did reach out for us, especially on the food, supply, and this is the only way we have.
Lastly, going back to the GCC, is the GCC as we know it dead, and could things ever return to the way that they were?
If you ask me this question before 5th of June, I would say the GCC is there. But today, it is not me to answer you. I don't have the mandate to answer you. The answer for this question is only in the hand of the Qatari people.
In the Qatari, if they say we want to leave the GCC, would you say okay?
I don't have a say on this today. Today, this is for the Qatari people to decide.